When you stay in your own machine shop for too long, you lose touch of what is out there. It's very hard to see how different engineers approach different jobs in different ways, and to see then how tooling and machines can affect what you're making.
Welcome to the MTD podcast. I'm Giovanni Albanese hosting today's show, a proud member of the MTD team. Today, I'm at Brafe Engineering Limited in Ipswich, and I'm joined by two very special guests. Firstly, we're joined by Chris Pritchard, the head of machining. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Hi, Gio, you all right?
I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for having me today. It's been brilliant.
You're welcome.
And secondly, Carl Downing, who works for Grob Machine Tools.
Hi, Gio.
How are you doing, Carl? All
Good,
right?
yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a really interesting podcast, this one. We've been here all day today, and we've really kind of looked at the process improvements that you've made here at Brafe Engineering. This company has got a lot of heritage. You're still doing things in a very traditional manner, but it's quite easy to see that you've really evolved over the years. So we want to really touch on that in the podcast, but we also want to touch on some of the new technologies that you've brought into play that have really revolutionised the business effectively. But before we get into all these niceties, firstly, I'd want to find out a little bit about you guys. You know, I want you to tell our audience a little bit about you guys, why you got into engineering. So, Chris, firstly, thanks for having us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Why did you get into engineering, Chris? And tell our audience a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I've been in engineering all my life. I started off as an apprentice on the shop floor, running manual machines, then quickly moved on to CNC machines. I spent 18 years at the first company that I was at, so I got a good depth and a good knowledge of all forms of metal cutting in the industry. And then I was open to an opportunity to become a sales rep for a cutting tool company, which enabled me to go out, see the world, see what other forms of engineering there was, what new technology there was, and that sort of led me down to the path of where I am now. So
Chris, you said to me earlier, sorry to interrupt, Chris, but you said to me earlier on the shop floor that really kind of was a game changer for you because you've seen so many different processes. Can you tell our audience the story you told me earlier, please?
Well, yeah, completely. When you stay in your own shop and your own machine shop for too long, you lose touch of what is out there. And I know there's wonderful places like the Mac Show where you can go and see all these nice new shiny things, but it's very hard to sometimes relate and to try and improve anything that you're doing in your work environment without actually seeing this stuff and knowing what it can do. And when I was with the tooling, when I was selling tooling, it enabled me to see how different engineers approach different jobs in different ways, and to see then how tooling and machines can affect what you're machining and ultimately the end result of what you're making.
So effectively, you were a solutions provider back then. And why did you join Brafe? And what was your task when you joined Brafe?
When I joined Brafe, I was asked to come in here as head of machining. Again, Brafe we've been making castings for over 50 years, and we've been machining product for 30 odd years. And the technology, although we've always invested quite keenly in new plant and new machinery, we haven't always looked to sort of take that next step and really evolve it into 5-axis mill turn. It's always been standard 3-axis mill, 2-axis lathe, and so on and so forth. So I was keen to sort of get my foot in the door and make those changes almost straight away.
And I heard a lovely story today about the company is owned by the employees.
Yeah, we're an employee ownership company, which it makes us more like a family. You know, we've all got our own added interest and benefits of being here, and we all work hard because of that. And we all know what the end goal is. So,
I mean, we've been around on the shop floor today, and it's such a lovely environment. Everyone seems so happy, and it's so refreshing to see. Now, moving on to you, Carl, Can you tell our audience a little bit about you? Now, you're working for Grob, and we've had some cracking conversations during the day that would be great to get out in this podcast.
Pretty much the same story as Chris, really. Been in engineering around 20 years now, straight from school to college. Did an apprenticeship, was with my first employer for 10, 11 years, and then got to travel, a little bit like Chris, see the world a bit, see Europe, see how other countries, attack engineering, so to speak, and then come back to the UK, and then was lucky enough to get an opportunity at GROB, and running with that now, yeah.
Brilliant. So, engineering, does it run in your family?
Yeah, I suppose pretty much the same as every family. Your dad says that you have to go get a trade, and engineering was the natural progression, really. Yeah,
and we talked about Brafe as kind of a very family-orientated business. The employees own the business. You told me a bit of a nice story that, I'd like you to tell our audience about GROB and how closely you are.
Yeah, so GROB's pretty much the same fit as Brafe with regards to working ethics and ethos and heritage and experience, really. They're still family owned worldwide. We're just over 7,000 employees now, but I think it's a key ingredient with a small or large company, that family ethos. It filters down from top to bottom, really.
And you're all friends? You've all known each other for years?
Yeah, all known each other for years now. With GROB UK, I think we go back about 18, 20 years now, from the managing director straight down to the service engineers on the road.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really guilty myself of not knowing the GROB machine as much as I maybe should do, really. And I know I've been seeing it on MTD recently, but this is the first time that I've had to get up and close to the machine tool. And in past, when I was out on the road, I didn't see them that much apart from at big, large OEM companies. But that's really changing now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where we predominantly was. We was well known in the OEM. That's what we did. That's what our USB was. That's what we did. But we're slowly shifting that across now into the standalone market, and people like Brafe and other companies, other sectors are starting to really see the advantages of that concept. And the concept hasn't changed. It's still the same. It's still the same concept. So we're just bringing that over now to aerospace, mould and die, and other industries, really.
Well, I really want to kind of touch on the capabilities shortly, and we will do together in this podcast, of the GROB machine tool and the modular aspects. I just love it. I love the makeup of it. It's really interesting and really well designed. Now, Chris, close your eyes close your ears, sorry, if you want to, Carl, and your eyes if you want. But Chris, what do you like about the GROB machine, and why did you go for a GROB machine? Prior to actually, Chris, what was your problem, and why did you decide to go to GROB to solve it?
Okay, the biggest problem that we got is, like I said previously, when I came to Brafe, we have a lot of 3-axis mills, 2-axis lathes, and they're good at doing individual operations. And for a lot of our cast components, they can take up to 7 or 8 different operations around the shop. I wanted to try and reduce that down to 1 or 2 per component. And the way I needed to do that was with a mill turn combination. Now, because we do castings, a lot of our parts don't suit going into a 3-jaw chuck. So we had to look at other ways of work holding. So naturally, I was more focused towards the milling side of a 5-axis, but I then wanted that luxury of a turning table on there as well. So I took my issue to 3 of the major OEM machine tool builders. The first one, they had limitation that I could only get the machine in a 2-pallet configuration, which is not my requirement. The second had limitations on how I would be able to machine and finish the component, whereas when I took it to GROB, they came up with a solution that encompassed all the problems that I had with the current component, and they fixed my issue. So therefore, it was a no-brainer to go with the GROB.
Is it so? Effectively, it's revolutionised the way in which you used to work, and give me an example of kind of a case study on a particular, like, let's just address to our audience that you actually make your own castings and then you machine them firstly. So castings are quite problematic part to hold. So give me a case study on kind of a part that you used to make before you had the GROB, and how long it used to take, and now that you've got the GROB, the difference that it's made. Yeah,
well, I can tell you about the case study that we done for the actual component that essentially we bought the machine for, and that was an operation or a part that traditionally would take 7 operations around the shop. We've removed all of those operations apart from 2, the first one being a pre-op to hold the part, and the second one is just to machine it complete from start to finish. And historically, that would have taken between 2 to 3 weeks, and like I said, 7 operations. And it's such a game changer because the amount of capacity then that frees up on all the machines it would have traditionally gone through, whereas now they can be making other products and making us more money.
You must have done a return of investment on that.
I don't think I need to, really. It was one of them. It was, I was fortunate. I got to take one of the directors with me up to SECO, where we've done the cutting trials on their Grob G350T, and when the MD saw what we were doing and how quickly we were doing it, it was a no-brainer. The return on investment, it was instant.
I mean, I've been down and had a look at that component. It's really, really impressive. There's kind of quite complex milling but turning as well on there. It's a cracking component.
I was walking around with the shop with Chris, I think a few weeks ago, and you were looking at other jobs, weren't we?
Yeah. There is nearly every product that now comes down to the shop. They say, "Oh, could that go on the Grob? Could that do this?" And yes, it can, but we've got to be sensible and reasonable at this time. We've only got one. We can.
That could change.
There's also 35 other people in there that want some work to do, so we can't all just put it through one machine.
It's that different thinking. We can do this or we can do that. So that different approach to a different concept.
And that's moving on really nicely into the next part of this podcast. Now, process development. This is the part of the podcast that we really want to focus on. In the collaboration between a machine tool provider and an end user. This is key, isn't it? And I just want to kind of firstly, let's state the machine tool. It's a G350T. The T stands for turning capabilities. Yeah. Can you just go through your range and give our audience a bit of a breakdown about the machine tool and why it's different to other fifth axis machine tools of this type, especially with turning capabilities?
So obviously the makeup of ours is a horizontal machining position, or a spindle anyway. And then we have the A and the B axis in a trunnion, but it's a single side supported trunnion. But the trunnion's supported with an oversized bearing, so it's the biggest bearing that we can get for the A axis, the rotary, and it's more or less a 1-to-1 ratio. And then it's twin ball screw Y axis supported, and it gives you that advantage with not only rigidity and a stable process, but also that access from that one side then. So that's what we offer, different from a natural VMC 5-axis really.
I mean, the ergonomics on that machine it really stands out. I mean, when you kind of see it from the front, it looks quite a big machine, but you walk around the side, it's so slim. And when kind of, floor spaces is such a premium nowadays, it's very impressive how you squeezed it all in with the swarf management
all the
system.
ancillaries, so it's all in that single footprint really. And I think, like you said, when you walk around the machine, you expect, is that it? That's
absolutely,
it,
that's exactly what I thought. And I mean, even the ergonomics, I mean, this is probably a good question for you really. I mean, you've got to get into that machine, load that machine bed, set the hold it up on the machine tool. And this is another point that we'll probably touch upon in a minute, because when you're kind of doing that underside machining, the work holding, I would assume is absolutely key.
It is, going back to the ergonomics of the machine, I was surprised when it turned up, because literally it's the machine. The swarf conveyor is attached, the coolant tank is attached. Literally roll it in, sit it on the floor, level it up, and that's it. There's no auxiliaries bought in or bolted to or anything like that. It's all as one unit. What
really impressed me really with the ergonomics, but not just the ergonomics and the accessibility, but the actual design. It looks like it's been designed with weight in mind, weight is working for you, not against you, how it's been designed. And you look at the spindle, how it's all been built in with the box guideways. It's got nowhere to go. You're kind of working right up to your components, so you've not got no droop or deflection, and you can really hit them parts hard, I would assume.
Yeah, definitely.
And material wise, I wouldn't. I'm guessing here. You tell me. Can machine anything.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we specialise in super alloy castings. From Hastelloy to Inconel, and it hasn't phased it yet.
When it comes to that, with the Z-axis, obviously your spindle is very important in any machine tool, so making sure that with our tunnel concept, obviously the spindle's in constant contact with them rails, so it never leaves that stable process from the beginning of the stroke to the end of the stroke. So from your start of your process to the end, you're always in the best machining condition throughout.
And for listeners that may be looking to invest in a fifth axis machine and with the bonus of having turning capability on it, so it saves a turning operation or two turning operations maybe, what advantage has the underside machining got as well? Why would you go for a horizontal fifth axis rather than a traditional type?
So obviously with the underside machining, obviously you get the natural chips away, but it's that tool life that's absolutely critical, really.
And is that because of the swarf evacuation?
Yeah, and the natural makeup and the concept design with ours, and that just allows all them ingredients to come into one to give you that tool life added bonus, really.
And the A-axis rotation strokes,
Yes, you've got plus 45 and then minus 185, so that's a total of 230 degrees.
Is that kind of is that good in comparison?
Yes, obviously the concept, again, it was born out of the automotive. That's what it needed to produce a cylinder head or an engine block. You needed that makeup, that horizontal position with that axis constantly going from 0 to 90 degrees. But then obviously we sort of naturally fed it into the aerospace, into other sectors, and it's just really naturally grown. I think it's been got with both hands with other companies now, and they're realising the advantages of that concept over others.
Right, it sounds fantastic. Now,
the way the machine moves, you would kind of expect it sooner or later. It's just going to go full 360.
I mean, it's lovely to see. I mean, it's just been so well designed. There's no wastage there in any way, shape, or form. It's just perfect for application. Now, it sounds like you're really happy with it, and we're talking about process development. Would you have been able, it's a silly question, but would you have been able to have improved your processes without it?
No, I don't think we would. No, that's not true. There would have been things we could have done, but it would have been looking at sort of trunnion type 5-axis that you'd bolt to your standard 3-axis mill, your bed mounted trunnions. And that just wouldn't have done the same. It wouldn't have given us the size and capacity that we need. You've seen our castings down there. They range from 1 inch in diameter up to probably 30, 40, 50 inch in diameter. So there's such a vast range of sizes. And like what I was impressed with the Grob on what was the entry level machine at the time, because there is now the new one that's out. It still can turn up to 620 in diameter. And that's a big lathe by any standard.
In such a small footprint
it is,
again.
Yeah,
so does I mean, you're not doing high volume works, Chris. So you need something that's really flexible, that really lends itself to lots of different variants of the work that you do. Does that also fit?
It does. We chose to go with the shunt work holding on there. So it's a simple sort of click, drop the part in, pressurise the airline, and it's on.
0 point.
Yeah, it repeats so well. And again, the operators, they doubted that, said, it's never going to be that repeatable. But they've soon learned that they can take a fixture off and put it back on, and it repeats within microns.
Yeah.
And also, because it's a new process and a whole new thing for us, the guys that are programming it, when I program it, we don't get it right first time. But if that's the case, we can just take that part off, go on to something else that we can do, and whilst we change the process, change the method, we can then put it back on at a later date and continue exactly from where we left off.
Question to both of you, really. I'm impressed with this machine tool. It's a little bit different in regards to fifth axis configuration. The traditional fifth axis consideration that most people would kind of naturally assume. So what are the barriers to entry? Obviously, you're kind of highlighting some really great USPs, and both of you have. So what is the barrier to entry? Why are we not seeing more fifth axis machine tools like this with turning capability?
I think it's only natural. Some people don't like change, or they're scared to make that leap of faith, and they always want other people to make that jump first. But
yeah, I think with the turning option on the 5-axis, it is obviously a considerably more greater expense to get that turning option. But for the products that we make, that cost is kind of irrelevant because of what it does for us long term.
Yeah, so it's basically, once you've got your return on investment, it's done, isn't it? And would you guys say that there's lots of engineers out there that would really benefit from this type of machine tool, that just kind of need to kind of conquer their fears and really kind of look at it open-mindedly?
I think Chris touched on it earlier with, I think out there's this stigma that Grob's unreachable with regards to price, but I think Chris has touched on that and said that the technology is not, so it is achievable.
I think return on investment is the key. The price doesn't matter then, does it?
No, it doesn't. No.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't come into the equation.
No.
Now, how important, Chris, was the relationship? And again, you can close your ears.
I'm not going to close my ears now.
How important was the relationship with Carl in this kind of venture and the collaboration?
It's been brilliant the whole way through. The applications engineer, I'll mention his name, Luke. Thanks very much, Luke. You've done a great job. He's been phenomenal the whole way through. He's literally a 24-hour helpline. I can text him, ring him, WhatsApp him, FaceTime him whenever, and he's always willing to answer and help us out. But from the very get-go, he was fully engaged in the project. I think he wanted it probably to succeed more than I did. He just seemed that way inclined, and he's that determined to get it done. And from the initial concept of actually doing those trials at Seco, he was on board with it the whole way through, and he's been brilliant the whole way. Any little problem, any challenge, he's answered it and solved it for us.
I think that's a strength of GROB UK as well. The people that work here, they are actually passionate about what they do. They enjoy what they do, and they do take their work home with them.
Yeah, and one other thing for us is we've always historically had either a Haas or a Fanuc control in the shop. So to make the jump to Siemens was a big step. And I know our operator, he was a bit nervous when it first turned up, and he was sort of, what does all this code mean? And now it's second nature to him, and it all makes perfect sense.
It was easy to pick up.
Yeah, it's
conversational.
Yeah. It's not that bad at all.
Yeah. I said at the beginning of this podcast really that when I was on the road many years ago, I didn't see many of them in end users or medium-sized engineering companies, but I have started to. You definitely eating up some of the market share, Carl, and it's quite easy to see that you're building great relationships. Is it not just about the machine tool, but the relationships as well?
100%, yeah, 100%. It's about working relationships and how people from grassroots, from the ground up, whether it be the operator or the application support or production managers, how they can get in contact with Grob, how that relationship works, not just through the first initial purchase, but going forward. You need to work together. It has to be a collaboration. It's not just a drop-down machine tool. There you go, and off you go. It's about building that relationship further and further for the future.
Long term.
And
let's talk about business in general now. I mean, it's been a crazy year. I'm not going to kind of use some of the words that everyone's been using, but it's been a crazy year. But there's definitely been positives. But one thing's for sure, everyone needs to look to reduce cost per part. It's key in any manufacturing facility, and some of these new technologies that are coming out, they need to be embraced. I think that COVID has really highlighted that. Would you agree, and have you guys had a good year?
Yes, definitely, but I think it's in every engineer's DNA. They thrive on challenges. I don't know if Chris will back me up on that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I totally agree. We've been very fortunate with the orders that we had going into this COVID situation. That our order book was very healthy going into it, and that's kind of fueled our intent to grow and to modernise our processes.
Have you grown this year?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the next 6 months might be a little bit trickier with now that the COVID situation has sort of dragged on for so long. But there's work out there. We are getting orders, and we're maintaining a healthy order book. So.
And is it imperative? I mean, you've been tasked with head of machining and process development. Is it imperative to invest in the latest technology to be competitive?
Yeah, we were talking earlier. Yeah. I've got a game plan of sort of my next 3 to 5 steps that I want to make to continue the business.
Can you tell us what they are?
No, definitely. No, because this salesman here will go home very happy. But I think the intention will always be to get another one and just move up slightly on size. We've started off with the baby machine, which is the 350T. I think there's definitely room to move on to the 550. I think if I was to 750, it's probably a little bit beyond our requirements at the moment. Again, I'm trying to sort of change a culture here. This is a totally new concept to Brafe and the way they've machined things over the years, and I think we should just walk before we run.
Yeah, well, with the initial first step, you'll naturally see it grow now, won't you? So,
I mean, like from talking to you guys, it can machine any material. You know, you've got all the capabilities in the wheel, turning, full fifth axis simultaneous. So what are the limitations? Is it just the size of component? Is that it?
Yeah, for me, yeah. I'm confident I can bolt any component on there, machine it fully in minimal operations possible. It's just my concern is how big is that part and does it fit? And I've already stretched the capabilities. I've got a model of the machine. I loaded one component onto it, and it was outside the window of technically what the machine would do, but it fitted and it did actually machine it, so I took it to above and beyond. You know.
I mean,
nervous operator.
Carl told me a story earlier that, you know, there's a lot of Grob users out there that don't want to kind of promote the machine because they don't want to give away trade secrets, because it's kind of made such a vast improvement to their business and gave them, you know, an advantage, an edge. You know, obviously you're sat here promoting this machine, but would you recommend it to other engineers? Without a doubt.
If you want to improve the way you do it and you want to improve your processes and make it as slick as possible, there wouldn't be any other machine I'd recommend.
I think that comes, again, that's Grob's experience really with the OEM, with the automotive, where they go on projects that last from 18 months to 5 years, but they are pushed to find every single ounce, every single second, every single little bit from that process. I think with us bringing that into the standalone market now, I think customers lean on us as well for that experience.
Is your business model changed in the UK, Carl? Because, like, you know, we mentioned again at the beginning of the podcast, you've always been heavily involved with the big OEMs, but now you kind of, or whether it's been the end user has become more educated and seen your machine tool and realised that that's got a place within their facility and the perception and has changed, or is it a case that you've changed your business model and says, right, we're going to actually go out there and sell it to smaller engineering companies too?
A bit of both, if I'm being honest, a natural bit of both, Obviously the automotive industries took a shift, it's took a natural shift over the last 10 years, obviously with the technology going to electromobility, but within Grob, obviously, we put the concept, I think, 07, 08, I think it went into the field, and it's just naturally grew on its own, really.
Brilliant. It's been really insightful to talk to both of you and get both perspectives, really, and it's nice to be in a situation where we can, you know, it's not very often we either interview the machine tool sales guy or interview the guy that's bought it, but never really in this kind of scenario, so it's been really great to get both perspectives. Just to summarise, finalise, is there any last points? Where do you see Brafe going in the future?
Sky's the limits. No, of course I'm going to say that. Obviously, we're always looking for new work, new business. Obviously, we've got a foundry, so we can cast all our own components. We have the luxury of being able to cast them how we want them cast with specialised work holding, especially to suit the Grob. And yeah, I see us buying at least another one or two in the next 5 years, and just keep on that momentum going.
Brilliant.
We've got that on tape now, Chris. So.
And can we come and visit again in 5 years? Yeah, I think it'd be a nice case study. Right? And it's been great to really hear a really positive engineering story. We always hear these doom and gloom stories, pint half empty all the time. It's nice to hear pint half full. And same question to you, really, Carl. Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
I think Grob thrive off being challenged, and like Chris said, our application engineers are just sat there waiting to be pushed to the next limit, really, and that's the only way that you grow and you better yourself as individuals and companies, to be challenged, and that's what we're about, really.
I can't think of a better way to end this podcast today. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. If you've enjoyed this podcast, just let us know, comment or subscribe to the podcast, and if you've got any questions for me or our guests, let us know. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them. Until next week, the MTD Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MTD Podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on MTDCNC.com.